Good evening.
It is good to see many of your faces since we haven't seen faces for a while. So thank you for coming. I'd like to call to order the February 21st, 2024 meeting of GPAC. As a courtesy, members of the public may participate remotely in this meeting. Public can refer to the meeting agenda for information about how to provide public comment, either in person, here in the room, or via the Zoom teleconference. Since the city cannot guarantee that the public's access to the teleconferencing technology will be uninterrupted, and the option for the public to participate remotely is only a courtesy, if technical difficulties arrive for participants using the teleconferencing Zoom option, the meeting will continue unless required otherwise by the Brown Act. So, Sonia, if we could start with a roll call to see if we've got a quorum, please.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Matt Keys.
Here.
Stella Witherspoon. Here. Neela Sue is excused. Susie Kelly. Here. Chris Lee. Here. Sarah Blumenfeld. Here. Christine Rasmussen. Present. Carol Singer. Here. Conrad Bruce.
Here.
And Jim Cervantes will be ready.
Yes, he texted me. He'll be here soon. So do we have a quorum?
We have a phone.
Okay. The agenda was set out last week, I believe. And I was wondering if I could have a motion to adopt that agenda. Somebody. There we go. Thank you for saving me. Second. Okay. All those in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Raise your hand or say aye. 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 Okay. I think that's unanimous. Jim, welcome. Aye. All right. Okay. We've got a couple members of the public. Welcome. Any comments from the public on any items that are not on the agenda?
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay.
So I'm Dave Clark.
Yep.
And I'm on the Creeks Committee. That's not exactly why I'm bringing this up, but we have a meeting tonight at 7, but I'm gonna leave at 6:45.
Okay.
So if I walk out in the middle of you talking, that's not person.
Okay.
But,
David, I know you would never do that.
but a couple of things, I've had a hard time finding GPAC meetings on the calendar in the past. Now granted, you haven't met for a while.
Part of the reason.
Hard to find. But it turns out, I'll just point this out, the city's got at least 2 calendars. There's a public meeting calendar
Right.
and there's an event calendar. And you guys are all, the GPAC's on the event calendar, not public meeting calendar.
Ah,
And I think you gotta look into seeing what little box you gotta check someplace so that the announcement goes both places.
what were the two calendars? Your public and what were the other one?
Public meeting
An event.
and
An
events.
event.
And it's,
Okay.
it's probably, I don't know how to do it,
Okay.
but I just.
You haven't missed anything because we haven't been there.
Yeah, I think there will be in both
Okay.
places.
Sonia will look into that and report back at the next meeting.
Cause I don't want, I don't want to have, promoting inferiority complexes or anything. Preach on both.
You guys have always been the cool kids. What can I say?
Okay, I got another one.
Okay.
One other thing, on the website, it says that the typical meeting time is gonna be the third Tuesday. And if you permanently change that, I'd suggest changing that to.
Okay.
It's gonna be Wednesdays.
Yeah, I think we're sticking with Wednesdays.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, Tuesdays. This had to be moved just because of other meetings, so that's the exception. We've got,
Holidays.
yeah, we've got a listing here of the meeting dates coming up. I'll continue to pass this around to make sure that we're synced up.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
David, thank you. Any other public comments? Either remotely or, yes,
I just want to say thank you all for being on GPAC and returning this year. But really appreciate your work and look forward to this work on the land element. So thank you.
well, Gina, and welcome as our advisor and leader. So we're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, unless there's any other comment, Tony, I will turn it over to you to go through the overview of the land use.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. Good time to see each other this year. Like Mayor Dawson said, I appreciate your time tonight and your work going forward as we continue working on our general plan. I didn't make a PowerPoint because I wasn't sure if we had any tech in here, but that's okay. The staff report hopefully set up the land use, chapter of our general plan. As I stated in the staff report, the general plan has a list of elements, it's made up of all those elements, under state law, all those elements have to be internally consistent. So as we can take one by one, as the city of Lafayette has been doing, but as we go along, we have to keep making sure that they all say the same thing in a way. So with that, the land use element, the last time the general plan was updated was in 2002. So we're, typically the general plans are good for about 20 or 25 years. So we're definitely, due for a refresher. So what we wanted to do tonight is, bring the land use element, before you and really just kind of look at the framework, kind of talk through how we were to analyze it and just make sure that you're aware of all the components so that when we are ready to start making some changes and we bring a draft to you, you know what the landscape is and you know what we're talking about. What I have behind me is the land use map. This shows you the land use designations. Whenever we talk about a general plan designation for a parcel, the first thing a planner is going to tell you what the general plan designation is. And that really sets the tone for what you can do in that parcel. General plan designations are very broad. I explained this in our October meeting, is that land use regulations, I describe it as an upside down triangle. The top tier is your general plan. It's going to give you some more macro descriptions. As you'll see, and as I noted in the staff report, they're very macro, residential, commercial, open space, very broad. Once you go further into that upside down triangle, then you're going to get your specific plans and your zoning ordinances. And that gives you your development standard, heights, setbacks, that sort of thing. The land use designation captures the densities. And so we'll come back to the densities because I think that's going to be a big part of our work. And so when you look at the pretty brief, I'm pretty impressed that our land use chapter is only 37 pages. That's it. That's the good news. When you look at it, you're going to look at the goals, programs, and policies. That's what we're going to review and analyze and update. We're also going to look at the land use map, what I have before you. I included in the packet what was adopted in 2002, which you see black and white and had dot lines, and it worked at the time, but we have GIS now. So, but you'll see it now and you'll see it in color. This is what we're going to look at, and feel free to come up after the meeting and look at it closer. And so you can start visualizing how the city is laid out and where the concentrations of land use designations are. Any questions so far? So that's the framework. Land use map, goals, policies, and programs. That's really important. What we can do until we know what the housing element looks like is at least start looking at these components of the land use element and start thinking about what you envision that needs something, whatever needs updating. The original vision for the land use element was really to align it with the housing element, because we'll get a lot of information from the housing element. Any changes that we said we would make to changes to the density, the definition of the density, any reclassification of properties, this is what we will do. So now, part of what we've been talking over time and just talking to people as we gear up to do this work is what happens to the BART station. Do we change it to public utilities? Are there any public utilities or public properties that we want to see changed to a park, as an example? So that's really what this opportunity is about. So I want to just welcome you to take the conversation there and let us know what you think we should do, what your constituencies would like to do. And again, we're going to get the information from the housing element first, align that, make sure that matches up, and then see if there's anything else that we need to clean up. What I mentioned in what I said a couple of minutes ago is that the city of Lafayette includes densities. You will see it when you go back and read it again, is that it describes densities up to X amount. In other jurisdictions, or state law allows you to set a range, 1 to 2, 2 to 6, that sort of thing. And the way the the land use element currently is, describes it is up to 35. So that really is something that we can talk about. We'll match it to the housing element, but also that's gonna be, I think, a topic of conversation. So as we go on with this work, let that sit and then give it some thought, and we really want to hear what you think about that sort of approach. Let me see, what else was I going to say? When I talk about the scope of the update, what we are not going to do is talk about allowed uses, for example, within those land use designations, because that's something for the zoning ordinance. That's that second tier of regulation that's more specific. And so that's not what we're going to capture in here, but here we're going to keep it at that land use designation level.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So, for example, there's the downtown specific plan that
Yes.
exists today. That's outside the scope of what we're gonna be doing with
Yes.
land use.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a work plan yet or a decision yet of when and who is going to address that?
From in the past year, as far as I've heard it come up as one of our work plan items.
Right.
We're still under discussion because the talk is whether we're updating the downtown specific plan as an entirety, or are we looking at it as changes to the downtown stipulation and incorporating more multimodal features. So I don't really know which one's gonna come first, or we're gonna do it together. What we want to do is not have a lot of smaller plans that work independently. We'd rather want something that's easier to execute and implement.
Okay, so I guess to make sure I understand what you said is we're not sure yet whether it's in scope or out of scope, and we're not sure who's going to address it.
Well, it should not be out of the land. The specific plan will not be part of
Okay,
this work.
it will be outside.
It will
this,
be
okay.
outside for sure.
But then who addresses it is the open question.
Right, we'll see what the city council directs us to do.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So if anyone had a chance to read the existing land use element, does anybody have any questions about the way it's laid out, or what your constituencies might be interested in doing? And what we can start doing while we wait for the readoption of the housing element is there's a lot of things to update in terms of demographics and growth populations and those type of things that are provided by ADAG. We can start doing that, just kind of start teeing up some of the parts while we wait.
Are there any, since this was last written, are there any state laws or regulations that change what we can or cannot do, or issues that we need to address in land use?
There are, I don't have a list of those, but as we read this, there's a lot of state laws that are moving away from subjective standards. So anything that really starts looking at subjective or references to fitting into a character of a neighborhood, that's something that we're probably going to hear from the state as they evaluate our housing element, and then that will trickle down into the revisions of this document as well. So that's just broadly what we're seeing in terms of the trends. One of the other plans was telling me that perhaps some of our language about population density also might be out of sync with state law. So we'll get that list of items, and we'll start at least bringing it to you to show what the inconsistencies with state law from just the get-go.
Okay.
That,
Yes, go ahead.
we did have a list before when we started this process. So this is the one you were gonna update. We all had this.
I don't know what.
I can't see from here.
Yeah, I can't see.
So all the question you were asking, the current legislation that affects the land use was in one of our packets when we didn't meet.
Ah, okay.
What is that?
So yeah, go ahead, pass it on to Sonia. Good memory, Carol. I forgot about that.
No, I didn't remember it was in the packet.
Better note keeper than I am.
Good
Oh,
organization.
this is great. I'll take a copy of this. I have not seen this, but yes.
Okay.
So we can do something like this and update it and add any additional legislation, because I think that'll be pretty much the first cut of what we will do, and then we'll present it to you so that we can. continue
Is there
to-
more? Are there more things?
I'm sure this doesn't have a date on it.
No,
This is
it
pretty
didn't.
old. Good date on this, so I'm sure there's more. It seems like every 6 months, there's something new that we have to weave into our current documents, but thank you for sharing that. I'll take a picture of it before I go today.
Did you have any other questions?
No.
Okay.
We're
So-
gonna get an update.
Sonia, I had another question. You kind of touched on it. There are a lot of phrases in here which are, I'll call them ambiguous. Characters in there a couple of times. Your direction is that we're gonna have to kind of weed out those ambiguous statements and be more specific. Is that where you think we need to go?
Well, the general plan, sounds kind of obnoxious, but the general plan is intended to be general, right?
Okay.
So anything that's general, there's no problem with being non-specific.
Okay.
It's the state has been really concerned about things that are objective versus subjective. So that's what we have to review this document for and identify anything that might not be easy to implement or that might not line up with other elements.
Okay.
So that's what we're gonna do. But there's no problem with being general, and that's part of the issue with a general plan is that I think we're always in my practice at least, we want the specifics. We want like hurry up to get to the specifics, but it's okay with the general plan. We're still looking at the big picture. We're still looking at is it green or is it red? Are we yellow? Where's all the yellow? It's really okay to stay in that space and to look at the community with that perspective. And you say, oh, what's this going? Why is all of our commercial here? Should we move it somewhere else? Most likely, I haven't heard any movement around that. But really looking at it from a zoomed out perspective, and that's what I invite you to do, just to keep that zoomed out perspective.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. We had just internal calls, internal talks with a transportation engineer and Parks and Rec, just kind of generally again saying, if you're looking at this map, what would you want us to do? And they said, oh, okay, how about this? How about this? Have we looked at this property? Who owns this? Do we own it? Those are the conversations where we are right now, just very, very broad. So that's what this process is for. But we're really not anticipating major changes. We're really, the bulk of the change will be to align the housing element with this.
Maybe, I'll go, Chris, go ahead.
Have there been any or substantial changes to what's been approved by the planning commission over the past 20 years versus some of the early goals for how ridges and hilltops should look,
I've
what
not-
style of
yeah.
house should be approved, etc.
Like in terms of a design review level or?
Yeah, because some of the goals actually they don't get very specific, but they get specific enough about what homes should look like on
Mhm.
ridgeline.
Right, we're gonna see that we like the homes. I like,
To not
my
be
director
too
says that it sits
obvious.
quietly on the hill, right? We
Yeah.
want it to sit quiet on the hill. I think there's no problem with that. There's no problem with that at all.
Mhm.
Once we get down to that bottom part of that triangle,
Mhm.
it starts manifesting in a different way, because then if the state says, hey, for any new houses, you have to provide objective standards,
Mhm.
and the objective standards then have to read, objective standards. We can't just talk about the feeling or the nature or the character. We just have to say this size, this height, these setbacks, very clear.
Mhm.
That's the trend.
Mhm.
So hopefully this helps. I know felt a little bit bad about giving you the old one, but I wanted to just give you the official state of the general plan. But we can make this available. Provide it on site too. So that's what we're doing right now. We know that we can't move along too fast because we're waiting for that other element to come through. But it's worthwhile to start thinking about it, start breaking down what we have now, and then give it some thought and definitely let us know what your with your constituency that you represent, are interested in. And that's what we could do.
So do you want to give the team an update on where we are with the housing element, the feedback we got from the state? I know we talked, but I'm not sure everybody knows. You've got a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to jump too far off topic. So is this a portion that we're gonna be working on? Is this gonna be including public input as much as we had, let's say for the mission statement, and are we having roundtables with public, surveys? Are we doing that kind of thing?
I think it'll be more so along the lines of the safety elements where we did have some, we had an evening at the library, we had kind of pulled out the concepts, invited people to come through, so it'll definitely require some public engagement. Land use element is, I'm a planner, so it's like the funnest one for me. So that's where we really get to talk to the community and see what their vision is and see what they want the community to look like in 2040. That's what we're doing.
Answer yes.
Yes, that's a long way of saying yes.
I was very excited
But
about it.
for Matt, so just in terms of sticking to the agenda, I'll speak to the housing element to the extent that I did mention it in the staff report.
Okay.
Which is that we did receive comments from the state housing community development department, and we're still are not certified, and we're pending that step from the state.
Okay.
So once that happens, it will get reapproved by the city council, first be presented to the planning commission, and then it'll go to city council for reapproval once the state is done with their process.
Any questions?
I have a question. Do you anticipate engaging a consultant for this chapter?
We don't have budget for that right now, so it'll just be stuff.
Okay.
Any questions from GPAC before maybe I ask if the public's got any questions?
I have a brief question. Has the PTR letter gotten to GPAC, or is it probably still?
I don't know if you have that in your file, that'll be coming up.
If there's anything that you want to share with me, just because we had change of staff, feel free to send anything that you have in your files to us so that we can take a look.
Yep, David.
Big picture, thanks, man. Well, sorry, say that. Big picture, the primary reason I'm here is because I want everyone to know that the Creeks Committee does want to participate to the extent we can.
Good.
And, we haven't talked about this in detail, obviously, because it's premature. As I said, we have a meeting tonight, and, the topic will come up, but we're not going to get into the weeds. That's land use terminology.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did read this, and I did have a couple of comments, sort of, I'm not sure the 30 hours, it might be 18.5 or something like that. But just to go through these in no particular order, maybe starting front to back. When I looked at the land use, I know this is an old document, but my suggestion would be that the bullet points, for example, on the first page, they line up with what is in the body of the text. And granted, this thing's gone through a lot of iterations and whatever, 20 years old, but at the end of the day, it's helpful to find things within the text if we can. If they line up with what's in the introduction, that's one kind of a basic thing. The other, your comment about the downtown specific plan not being, not part of this. It is referenced. I mean, it is mentioned. It's almost to the extent of it is mentioned, I think, on page 11. And my suggestion before you said that was there's also a downtown Creeks plan. So to the extent we have a downtown specific plan, I'd like to see that included too, but they're probably both. The downtown specific Creeks plan is even more specific than the downtown specific plan. So it's not going to be part of this, I understand, but they're just so everyone is aware, there is a downtown Creeks plan.
Okay.
And it finally, after many years, got adopted last year. So it's actually part of the municipal code now. Also kind of big picture, there are references to the creeks in a couple of places. If you do a word search, I think the word creek or creeks shows up 5 or 6 times, not very many, given the fact that it's a land use element. But there are some references to creeks in here, particularly with respect to the downtown, and they're general. And one of them's on page I-18, And it says creek restoration, preserve and reclaim the creeks in the downtown area. Happy Valley Creek is a primary visual corridor, blah, blah, blah. But that's a policy. So that's stated in the policy right now. In addition to that, there's also what I would call a major cross-reference from this element to the open space and conservation element with respect to the creeks. It says, on page 9 and 10. Hey, that's one thing that refer to the open space and conservation chapter, the old language is chapter, we call it element now, for additional goals, etc. with respect to creeks. So there's you get diverted there. And parenthetically, same thing happens with Park Trails and Rec. If you Google the word trail, word search trail, you find it once. And it's in the reference from here to the Park Trails and Rec element. So that's the way it's structured now. I'm not good, bad, and different. That's just where you're gonna, that's kind of how it works.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to continue that. I guess that's helpful, but I'm not sure. I want creeks in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And right now it's in both places, so maybe I should keep my mouth shut. But nevertheless, that's how this is set up now. And that was kind of it. Maybe I just wanted to, we're looking forward to participating in the process. And if you'd like us, I know Chris is on the creek committee as well. But if you'd like us to come and make a presentation at some point, so we don't have to talk real fast and get it within 3 minutes, we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, that's a good offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, David? Questions for David?
Comment? I think the first goal that talks about the creek areas is goal LU-2. And that seems to be the one that looks most appropriate for discussing creek life. So maybe that can be looked at further.
Okay. That's on page I-9.
Sorry, page I-9.
Yeah.
Carol also has in the file of goodies over here, a really good summary that I would like to have copies of. So maybe this could also be given to everybody. It's a general plan goal. Yeah, it's got everything sort of quickly written. Yeah, it's like a cheat sheet kind of thing.
All 23 goals.
Okay.
I think it's a good, and maybe Sarah sent it out, so maybe it still exists somewhere. but-
Page 2.
Yeah, look at the other page.
It's specific.
Land use goals.
Oh, okay.
Just a summary, right?
Yeah.
For easy. Can we get a copy of that?
Yeah. We get a copy. That'd be great.
Yeah.
While ago.
Go back into the history file.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if not, we can recreate it. It's not hard.
It's very helpful.
Well, they don't do it.
Any other comments from public? Yeah. Going once, twice? Okay, that's great.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
You pointed out the open space and the parks and trails, those are elements that we'll be taking after this one. Should we be doing them right after, and where do they fall in terms of, it seems like there's some overlap, so I'm wondering.
Right, because as I mentioned before, they're all internally consistent. So because they're internally consistent, you'll see markers of them throughout. And so it's this temptation to hurry up and move along with the other ones. But land use is land use. The next element that we discussed was transportation and circulation. That would be the next one to follow land use.
And do we need to go in a certain order?
And then after that, we're gonna batch up the last ones together, so open space.
Why can't we just attach open space to what we're doing now?
Well, there's an open space land use designation
Okay,
here, but then there's an open space chapter.
right, so
Later.
can't we just get
More specific.
Yeah.
could we just kind of continue on with what we're doing and do the open space?
You can say that for anything. You can say that for transportation. You can say that for all the other ones. So right now the plan is to work on land use element and then followed by transportation, which are the kind of the bigger elements as we work with them. And then the smaller elements will be to follow.
Come back to that, okay.
Yeah. And I know that's why we're gonna batch up the last one so that we don't feel like we're pushing others down the road. We should be able to batch up the last ones and do them pretty quickly.
I have a question. Yeah, so are there other committees that we should solicit input from or that staff will ask for input? I know we have senior Services Commission, Creeks has offered to be doing the presentation. Carol is represented from PTR, I'm transferred, but I'm wondering, are
Well,
there
we want
others?
you to bring whatever constituency that you represent, bring your perspective, so we can definitely go out and connect with the other stakeholders. Like I said, with PTR, we already talked to Jonathan months ago.
Okay,
We're working on a different timeline.
we have representatives from a number, but I know we don't have every, like, for example, Creeks is not represented officially. We do have Chris, which is great.
Yeah.
But it would be really
Yeah, the
helpful.
public process will be robust and make sure that anyone who wants to partake does that. It's usually more efficient to do something like what we did with this housing element, to have maybe an event at the library. Where we put everything out and collect comments. There's a variety of ways where we can collect.
For the general public, I'm speaking of Lafayette commissions or committees.
Yeah, any of the
that
stakeholders.
you would be able to reach
Mhm.
out to, okay, and
Yes.
then is there value in GPAC at this point in time, reading the downtown specific plan and the open space element that we've just been discussing in the Creeks
I
master
think
plan?
if it were me and I was not focused on one thing, I would recommend that you read the other chapters. They're not very long, and then you'll see how they're tied. If you see how they're connected, but the exercise is to focus on one, and focus on the other one. But you'll see the threads coming through, and I would find it helpful if I was looking at entirety of a general plan update.
And
So I
downtown specific plan also would be valuable to
It's-
review.
The specific plan is a reference, and I would see it as how do the specific plan is how we implement the general plan. So we take the guidance from the general plan, and that should reflect the specific plan. So when we update the general plan, we will have an idea of what the specific plan will look like.
But should there be a reference to the specific plan as perhaps guiding our work in the general plan?
I think it's good perspective. I don't think it's necessary, but I think it's good perspective. I can guarantee you will start thinking about transportation and circulation.
Mhm.
You will start thinking about infrastructure. It's just natural. When you're thinking about development, there's all these little facets. So very helpful for that. And I think that's very normal part of reading these types of documents.
Mhm.
You will start thinking, where is the creek? Oh, what are we gonna do about that? Isn't that next to an open space? So all these things just kind of, there's a domino effect. So I think it would be useful.
And some of them are more contemporary. So this we're looking at is 20 years old plus, whereas there's been a lot of good thought that's happened subsequent. I mean, I think the Creeks plan is very recently
Yeah, very
adopted and,
Well, the plan itself was adopted a number of years ago, but it's just the statute was just updated last year.
Okay.
The ordinance, right?
but it's in the 2010s. Is that right?
No, I think it was 2017.
Yeah,
It was right after North Mitchell.
and
Yeah, and
And
that's the
similar for
intent of
specific
these
plans.
types of documents, that you're really gonna touch them once every 20 years. And
Mhm.
it's all the implementation documents that get tweaked and revised as we go along.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think there's a really great idea to review the downtown Pacific plan.
Yeah, addressing Stella's concern, we went through that. I think Renata has all that about the commission dates. We made a calendar, I did. And the commission meeting dates and the GPAC meeting dates. And who would decide what? And the only one I think was the Transportation Commission, I think, was the only one that coincided where they could meet and get their input into the next GPAC meeting on that subject. No one else could. Park and Rec was totally off. And the decision was made that whenever the commission could meet and provide input, GPAC would consider it. But not a timeline, because there couldn't be.
Right.
So I think that might answer your question.
Mhm. Yeah.
Other questions, comments, discussion we want to have on this?
Well, I liked Dave Clark's recommendation or suggestion to have perhaps, did you say a joint meeting or invite a presentation creeks.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be a nice
Adding
way
them
to,
The agenda, I think
to
that's,
bring in, yeah, the different
we can add it to the agenda and have a presentation.
commissions,
Well,
yeah.
I think then you should do it with all the commissions.
I
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we can invite them to our meetings and we can see what they have to say.
Mhm.
You also want then to have other groups like nonprofits, Chamber of Commerce. I mean, we gotta think about it. How much time we're gonna spend on this
Yeah,
and what's the right way to get all that broad input?
Maybe it's for the ones that are specific for that chapter then. Right, so this would be for open space.
Yeah.
And, you know, then that would be Parks and Rec can come in, the, you know, the creeks can come in. And then when we get to the downtown portion, then we'd have the, you know, the Chamber of Commerce perhaps, and then, you know, if we could be really, you know, and then Stella with the transportation would be during that section. And then otherwise, they would have a rep come in and just represent them or
Yeah.
go through us, right? Because we do need more education at that point anyway,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So it would make sense that during each section that we're working on.
How many months do you think we're gonna spend on land use?
I was looking at earlier estimates of time, just looking back into the old history files, and we really were not planning to take more than like 2 or 3 months. I think the safety element. I mean, that was this is the whole,
Yeah.
this is before we were deep in housing element, spin cycle. But I, for me, I don't see us taking in any more than 6 months.
6 months.
Hopefully,
That's not gonna work with, how many commissions and committees do we have?
We
I
don't.
mean,
And we don't need all of them to come in individually, so I would, you know, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, but in terms of the land use element, we have representatives that can share the constituency concerns or we can, if someone asks, we can add them to the agenda. I don't think we need to necessarily have a presentation from everyone, because not everyone will have something to recommend for the land use element. And right now I'm just thinking about the land use element.
And really, that's part of our job is to represent that constituency. You know, as I was thinking about it, would I really have somebody from the Chamber of Commerce come here unless they wanted to listen to make a presentation? No, they kind of expect me to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I value your perspective. If your constituencies, you go direct to your constituencies, you let them know that we're working on this and facilitate however you want to collect that information and bring it back. I think that's a really good way to communicate that. And we'll also have a broader all public opportunity for someone who just wants to participate without being a member of a group or a member of a specific interest. So there will be extra time. So that's what I was under the impression that the representatives on DPAC will share the perspectives of the constituency.
We just don't have a representative from every Lafayette commission.
so
So
that-
Creeks is the one thing, and you know, I understand what David's request is. We just happen to have Chris here, who happens to just join Creeks, so we're lucky.
Yeah, so we
In
can
that
identify
sense.
those gaps as well.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
the thinking that this is the main vehicle for obtaining public comment, but it's not the only vehicle. People will have other opportunities as
Okay.
well. And if the chamber invited us and said, hey, could tell us about your land use work, I mean, we're happy to do that as well.
Okay.
We can add that. So we're flexible. I mean, it's important to get a robust public engagement component.
So what's your advice when you're looking at the land use to make sure that we don't get too much, to use David's phrase, down into the weeds of land use? And how do we make sure we're at the right level? What's your advice there?
That's your staff person's going to help you stay on top, stay above the weeds.
Okay, you're gonna be the whip.
I will do the whip. You're gonna say this over and over again, but it's very natural to very quickly slip into the details, very, very quickly. Hey, let's not allow dry cleaners in the downtown. I'm like, whoop, no. We're not talking about that here. That's different.
Okay,
We can still capture that, but we will capture it in a different part of our regulatory system.
okay.
we have a new element, climate. Did I hear that at some point?
We don't have a climate change or greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gas is typically what it's called, but we don't.
I thought we were gonna make one. No,
I don't know what the ETF, was it from the ETF? I was talking to staff from ETF and we were having a conversation about that, but it's not something that I've been tasked with.
Environment, no.
There's open space and conservation. I mean, I think that was one of the older titles, so it could potentially, I don't know what the conversation was before, but I can see where that might be.
But you're right
Yeah.
in that there is such a thing as the greenhouse gas element, or like, about the climate change, we'll say it's called greenhouse gas element. We don't have one, that's a standalone element. We do capture some of the impacts of the environment and conservation and sustainability within some of the policies, but we don't have a standalone climate, element. And so far, I've not heard anyone raise that.
Wasn't that part of the safety element? Didn't we have a little bit of?
There's
climate in
slivers
there?
of it
Yeah.
in the safety element, there's slivers in it in other elements. And that's, the state says you can do that.
Okay,
So you just need to cover it all. You can give it a home in different parts of the element. You just have to know, and they have to be internally consistent. So we'll work on those background data updates and the legislative changes to see what else we need, if there's
Okay.
anything that's problematic. And then we'll also.
you anticipate that being what we'll talk about in the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions at this point? Okay, so we'll bring that discussion to a close. We do have an item here of any committee member activity reports. Given our inactivity, it may not be a lot, but I certainly wanted to open up to anybody that's been engaged with your groups. Going once, going twice. Okay. We've got a number of housekeeping items. Before I go into the ones that are listed here, Carol, you said you had a couple that you wanted to
Yeah.
add. Why, could you go through those for us real quick, please?
We've brought this up before, I think, of having the, the plaques with our names. Because, we have new people,
The name ends.
yeah, and also for the video, for, people watching or anyone who comes that doesn't know who is that person. Just those white ones that we have at Park and Rec, I think they all have them. That was number one. And number two, I'd like to get a new roster. The last one I have is May 3rd of 2023. And I'd also like to get it, if it was coming in this format, so you had to
That's what she-
piece it together. 2 pages. Now, I don't know why they all came for a while in 2 pages. But we did have at one point, we had a very nice 1 page and it worked fine. Here it is. Everything covered addresses, and somehow Renata seemed to be able to do it, but
Okay.
this one.
Okay.
No
You
comment?
can read it, it's got everything on it, all the addresses, so I'd like to go back to this format.
Okay.
I'd have to paste them together.
Okay, not a problem.
I think those
And,
ones that were pasted were Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I think the other was the table Word.
Yeah. Okay, anything else, Carol?
And then get an update.
An update on the roster.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Current.
like right now.
well, we're gonna touch on that in some of the other housekeeping. But do you have anything else to add, Carol? Okay. Okay, unless there's any other housekeeping items, why don't we get to also the ones that we've got listed here? First is discussion of a new chair and a new co-chair starting with the next meeting. I have got the record of the longest serving chair of GPAC, but the shortest number of meetings. So I would like to make a motion that I get a plaque somewhere that says that. But anyway, Stella and I have talked, and given that we're starting to shift over to land use, it's probably a good time to make that transition. And typically, the vice chair has taken over for the chair, but it's still something that we want to vote on. And also, if there's somebody else that would like to be chair, certainly they should raise their hand or be nominated. So why don't I first ask, are there any other nominations for someone to take over as chair from the floor? I see no hands. Okay. You're stuck. So, like I said, typically, the vice chair takes over. I don't know, Stella, is there a few words you want to say before we take a vote, or?
Oh, well, I look forward to serving the city and working with all of you on the land use element and maybe the transportation element if we get that far in my tenure.
Okay, very good.
You need a motion?
I do need a
I
motion.
move that we vote for Stella Witherspoon as the chair of the GPAC for this year.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? Any objections?
Congratulations.
Okay, and their next meeting
Well,
will
okay,
be
then.
adjourned. Well deserved, well deserved. Now, also, we need now a new co-chair. We have had one person step forward, dragged forward, I think. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. Whatever. We have talked to Sarah, who has said that she would be willing to serve as co-chair. But before I have her talk, is there anybody else that wanted to be co-chair or vice chair? Vice chair, excuse me. I don't see anybody raising their hand. Okay. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and what your thoughts are?
Well, I feel like I'm changing hats on this committee from alternate to Happy Valley to nonprofit. So I'm flexible and willing to hang in there. No, I am thrilled to be asked and look forward to working with y'all and serving as well. So thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yes. Could I have a motion to nominate Sarah as vice chair?
So moved.
So moved. Second. Okay. Let's have a vote. All those in favor? Anybody object? Very good. Congratulations. So, okay, so the last item I've got on here before we go to staff updates is kind of an update on our vacancies and our tenure on GPAC. As some of you will remember, we were told that when we started this back in 2020, when it was that long ago, that it was a 5-year term. And those of you who are good at math know that we are going to be together more than 5 years to get all of this done. And I asked somebody to check with our legal department just to make sure, is there something that occurs at the end of 5 years where we have to reconstitute the group or anything like that? And there's not. So the idea is that those of you who want to continue to serve, we would love to have you continue to serve. However, if you feel like 5 years was all I could give and, you know, I'm going to kind of be done, we'd also ask just let us know as early as possible, because that gets us into the next issue of making sure that we've got backup people for GPAC and filling some of the openings that we do have on the team. So in summary, the idea is that we'd like everybody, if they are willing to, is to continue working on GPAC until we're finished, as opposed to a 5-year term. But like I said, if anybody is thinking about, you know, their time is up, please let staff know or Stella know, so that we can start planning for that. And maybe, Sonia, you can kind of give us an update on the work you're doing to fill the vacancies we've got.
I can do that. We sent out an email to a list that we had of people who were interested in other vacancy or the alternates. And we didn't get a really good response. So basically we just determined that our list was stale. And so I just spoke to the city clerk today and she's already advertised for those positions. So by the end of March, we'll wait to see what kind of responses we get. I saw one as they come in, they share them with liaison. I saw one come in. So hopefully we'll get some more. So if you have anyone that you know that might be interested, Joanne did post that solicitation. So crossing our fingers that we get some more.
Rachel Rimmon.
Especially the alternates is a tough one to to have. We really want to have that deep bench, and right now we don't have it, so we want to have that too. So there's interest.
Is the only vacancy we have is just the Happy Valley?
Valley one.
Okay. Okay.
So
Do we
any
still have
neighbors-
all these vacancies?
On the alternate list.
Alternates, that's it.
The
On the
alternates, yeah,
alternate.
we've been talking to Slim Pickens on alternates already, so that's my biggest concern to, like I said, have a deeper bench for alternates, but the only vacancy I have right now is Happy Valley.
Okay.
So
Well, and
any,
what about the student one? Yeah, what about our student? Isn't there supposed to be a
Youth Commission, there is a,
yeah, we
vacancy
have
there
one,
too?
well, we haven't administered the oath yet, but
Okay,
yeah, I'm
so
not-
it's just Happy Valley then, okay.
So please help us spread the word, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure people really check our website necessarily that often, but we'll post in our city communications and we'll broadcast that as much as possible. That if you have any friends, neighbors,
I could send a note to the Happy Valley Homeowner Association.
perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes,
Great.
great, yeah.
And my Happy Valley Street has a
Um,
kind of a collective Google communication, so I'll send it out to them.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions? Or Grace, did you want about this subject or something else?
Correct.
Go ahead, then.
Perfect, thank you. I had written Renata sometime back, I think it was June, and a suggestion I have is that, and I offered up, because I'm an alternate right now, so I come anyway, is that if Sarah wanted to go back to Happy Valley, since I'm nonprofit, I could step in as a nonprofit either for the community foundation or the nonprofit that I just want.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good.
Do I need to leave to go to PTR?
Okay, good. Well, thank you for your offer, Grace. Thank you. We may continue to move you around and around and around.
Vice Chair though.
Yeah. Okay, were there any questions online, by the way? Do you have anybody online?
There are two attendees, but they have not raised their hands.
Okay. Those of you, the two that are online, if you do have anything that you need to add, this would be a great time because we're gonna wrap up here pretty soon.
could I just interject on a housekeeping?
Sure you
Before we
can.
move
Yeah,
to staff updates?
yes.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Matt, for being an excellent chairman
Oh, thank you.
this past year. We have a card for
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Expressing our appreciation,
Thank you.
and you probably will need this just to kind of from the year of
Oh, yes.
safety and
These are always.
the many
good
years of housing. So
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all of your support and your help and advice and I wish we'd had more meetings, but I really did enjoy the time being chair and I'm looking forward to continue to work on the committee. So, and I'll join Chris and Jim and we'll be the X people.
Right.
So, staff updates.
Staff updates, as we know, Renata took a different job, and so we are hiring, we're in the process of trying to hire 2 more seniors since Nancy Grant also moved on. But in the meantime, I am gonna be your staff liaison, so please reach out to me. I'm very available, always in the office. And I'm happy to respond to any concerns. If you just want to talk about some concepts or something that you have on your mind, just reach out and have any next time to talk with you about anything that you want to talk about, general plan and other things, I suppose, too. And Michael Taylor is our admin, who he's got other meetings to also support, but he's been really key to making sure that this meeting also gets off the ground. So anybody has any concerns about the schedule or any reminders, or if you need any accommodation, just let me know and we're happy to do what we can to support your work.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, well, our next meeting is scheduled for March 19th, which is a Tuesday, and we're gonna be back here in the lovely Oak Room. So
It's not that bad.
No, it's not.
No, it's not bad. It's
small, but it's fine for everybody.
no, it works. It works.
Views kind of.
Well, yeah, you can't look out the windows. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending.